Hi, Walnut. Welcome to part two of Walnut Wants to Start a Podcast. This is a little place where I'm going to do a couple of screen shares and show you on screen how I do things. And I'll show you a little bit of the techno stuff that I use now. So in part one, we talked about the history, how Walnut Wednesday actually started and how I basically just YouTubed how to easily start a podcast. So if you are new here, you can go and look at that first section. But I am Lara, you can call me Laz, and I am the creator and host of Walnut Wednesday, the podcast, but it also has moved now into being a walnut as a movement of its own. So for the technos, I've been asked a lot of questions about what kind of items do I have. In part one, we talked about how literally Walnut Wednesday just started through the Anchor app on my phone, sat in my car, because apparently it had the best sounding audio if you're in a little booth with a car. Just sat in my car recording and uploading audio. I forgot to mention as well, I have been uploading successfully one episode a week on a Wednesday every single day since November 2009. So I'm very surprised at myself at how much I have stuck to this. But it is a process, and I just want to encourage you, Walnut, that you can do the things if you really want to. But I digress. On a techno note, I'm going to pause here and show you the camera that I use, and microphone and things like that. So I actually got given, I would have just continued to use the microphone on my phone and then later on my laptop, but I actually got given a Blue Yeti microphone. I'll show you that in a moment. And I also bought a secondhand DSLR from my sister that I utilize for the podcast as well. But after said solo episodes on my phone like this, I actually also started interviewing walnuts as well. Now, with that, I didn't quite know how to do this. So I actually started doing it on Zoom. And with Zoom, it was just on my laptop, on a Zoom call, hit the record button, and using my laptop microphone, which worked absolutely fine. And I still record all of my episodes. I'm recording this on Zoom today. So literally on Zoom, start a new meeting, hit record, it saves as a thing. And that's what I use as my podcast episodes, with both guests and solo ones. So use that. There's probably a system that you can, just plug in your camera and make it a video file, MP4 file or whatever. But Zoom just kind of works for me, and it just files it all nicely, and it's just simple. Then it's all the same for guest episodes and just solo ones. I just find it more seamless and easy. And everyone knows how to use Zoom. It's super simple. And I imagine that you've probably, if you're here, you probably do know how to use the Zoom. And if not, if you've got questions, you can let me know. So I started doing video ones for just when I had guests, and then I started doing video ones just on my own and uploading them to YouTube. And with YouTube came adding on intros and outros, which I'll get into shortly. So I'm just going to pause here, and I will show you what my camera looks like, the microphone that I have, and I think that's about all the technicalities that I have. So the quality is going to change ever so slightly while I show you which camera I use. Hello, Walnut, I'm back to show you my technology. So I have this Canon DSLR, which I bought secondhand from my sister, and it is just, look, I don't know what flavor DSLR it is. It is just one of those. And it just plugs in. It plugs into my laptop through a USB, and then on Zoom, I change it to the USB camera instead of the laptop camera. But this is what all of my earlier video podcasts were was just straight off the laptop. So this tripod, tripods are not a necessity, but I just bought this doohickey because I just did. I just bought it. You don't necessarily need one. I have at times just like stacked up all my books and put the camera on that, or even put my laptop on that to record things. So for those that asked what kind of camera I use and how I get my quality for my videos, it is with a DSLR that is plugged in through USB and recorded on Zoom. For the microphone component, I will just pause and come back to you. We're back. For the microphone component, Walnut, I just use this might sound terrible. I use a Blue Yeti microphone that I also bought secondhand off of my friend. And this pop filter here, I just bought off like a cheapy AliExpress or something like that, which just kind of screws on to the back of my microphone. And again, the microphone, it's just USB plug-in to my laptop and switch the setting, again recorded on Zoom. And that is how I did all my guest episodes when I got the microphone before I got the camera. So it was just plug in the USB and just record on Zoom as normal. So that is a little rundown of how I do things, how I physically make the podcast happen. The next part is also when I started uploading these videos to YouTube, I wanted to have my intro and my outro, plus the podcast episode in the middle. So I'm going to give you a little screen recording in a moment of what I use and how I tie my intro and outro together. But the first step for that is to go to I use Canva to create a YouTube sized graphic as the intro picture and the outro picture, and also to download your intro from Anchor. And what I do from there is I will show you in a second, but basically I plop it into my Movie Maker and then add the intro sound snip from Anchor as the soundtrack, and then save that as a file. And then I upload that file to YouTube, and I upload that same file to Anchor. So it's all the same, all in the same place. On Anchor, you can now upload the video file as well. So there's no farting around with making it audio or anything. Just that same video file goes into Anchor. Anchor will send it to Spotify, iTunes, Apple, all the relevant podcast places, and YouTube will go out on YouTube. So here is a quick little screen share of how I would edit my videos, which is just through a free Movie Maker. The free Movie Maker on my laptop. Again, schmancy, pantsy, no thank you. We are basic bitches in here. Okay, so this is Anchor. So once you have set up everything, so you just do the generical things like put your title, your cover, your graphic for it, your little bio. Gosh, I don't actually even know what mine actually says. Let's have a little look. So you'll do your podcast description, upload the cover art, then you can pick your sort of categories. You can put here if you're if you've got swearies in it, a little bit about you, website, all the additional links that you prefer. You even can have a color for your Anchor web page, link it to your Facebook, your YouTube, all your other additional places. So that's how you will first start up. And when you go to your main dashboard, a lot of the questions I get or I have received so far are all about the analytics. So this is where you can find majority of that sort of stuff. So I can see that Walnut Wednesday has been played over 8,000 times, whoop whoop, an average of 9 plays per episode, and I have an average of 12 people that are regular Walnut OGs listening to the podcast. It also gives you Walnut. Now, full transparency and honesty, I am not a tracker of these things. This stuff is not important to me and why I do Walnut Wednesday. So this is like nice, and I get a really like celebratory pat on the back for when I do check through this sometimes, but it is not something that I regularly track. So I'm probably not the person to get a tutorial off if you are a very analytical, wanting a numbers person, because this stuff just isn't actually important to me in the great scheme of Walnut Wednesday. However, it shows you all of the plays, how it's been performing, relevant episodes, which ones have sort of peaked and which ones sort of could have done better. And that's a good way for you to look at like the theme of a particular episode, like perhaps there were more listens on that one, so you might want to talk about that some more, things like that. So this is really good information to have in your back pocket, but like I say, not necessarily something that I religiously follow. In this audience tab here as well, it tells you what platforms people listen to your podcast the most on. So we can see here Walnut Wednesday is listened to the most on Apple, Upful, and it's coming in second is Spotify, and the rest is like other and like on the actual just like web page and things like that. So Apple and Spotify are my two big target places that people listen to Walnut Wednesday through. This is one that I actually do like to celebrate a lot, the geographic location. So this tells you where all your listeners are from. So obviously I'm a Kiwi from New Zealand, so majority of my listeners, 45% of them are in New Zealand, then United States and Canada, and then all these wonderful little percents here. Like these actually bring me so much joy. Philippines, Brazil, Netherlands, Russia, Czech Republic, UAE, Switzerland, South Africa, Mexico. So you get some really interesting countries pop up that I would have never thought to have, listeners and walnuts from, but welcome all the more. So that's a really cool piece of information there as well. This is another, majority of my audience have iPhones. That's really interesting. And then followed by Android and all the other devices that people listen to Walnut Wednesday on. This one tells you, again, this is just another episode one, so it tells you which episodes have had the most listens. So I can see here that episode 65 with Melanie and Leia has been played 327 times through the podcast, and then coming in close second is obviously episode number 1, the origins and how it first started, and followed through by all these other ones, which is it's just delicious. I used to celebrate every time an episode hit 100 listens, but since we're like over the 150 episodes now, I regularly post episodes so much as well. So that is a rundown of Anchor. In terms of sort of just uploading something, it is relatively quick. So what you can do here when you first start with Anchor is they have a ton of music that you can do to create and record straight from Anchor on your desktop or Anchor the app on your phone. That is actually how I created my intro and outro. So it's all music from Anchor. So you would just record through your phone and then pick a backing track through the library that they have. That's actually my library, pardon me. There's also some transitions if you want to do little breaks in the recordings as well. And this is a new setting. You can add Spotify music, which is pretty cool as well. That's a new thing that I don't use. So that is how you upload and create your intro, outro through Anchor. It's just all fiddling in this area here. You can monetize through Anchor. It's not something that I've looked into like a lot myself. And from the brief little look that I have done, Walnut, it is mainly for not, if you're in New Zealand, I think it's mainly for like US, Canada, people who use Anchor. You can get paid. And for me, the getting paid thing meant that you needed to do ads. And I hate podcast episodes that have ads in them. Sorry, Walnut. I think it just breaks the chain of the chat, and it's distracting. And I know that's what ads are for, but it's just not for me either. So I kind of saw that, and I was like, oh no, again, not part of my intention. But you can totally monetize your podcast through that way. So that was a little rundown on the Anchor system that I use for myself, that I still use for every episode today. Let me come back to the rest of this chat. The next part I want to share about is how I actually create the videos of my episodes now that I started doing them for YouTube and stuff. So what I do is I use my free movie maker that came with my laptop. So again, it's just easy peasy. I don't do anything technical. I don't know how to work Photoshop or any of the Flash video editors. This is just a freebie that I had on my computer. So what I will always do is I add from my documents the graphic for my YouTube cover, and I will add it twice for the intro and the outro. Oops, that's the wrong one. And then I will add in the video that I have pre-recorded on Zoom that I use Zoom for. So let's just say that I will do this one here. So I load that all in. Look at that funny face there. I know that my intro is about 30 seconds. So I make the start of my podcast 29, so it kind of fades in. And I make the end 4 seconds because I just use the little last bit as my outro. I always just do a fadey transition. To be honest, Walnut, I don't know if this makes any difference, but it's just force of habit, and this is what I do. Next, I edit my soundtrack, which is the audio that I have downloaded from Anchor of my podcast. So on Anchor, you actually are able to download your audios, and at the end of my intro, I just use the last little 4 seconds as my as my little bing bong for my outro. So I'll just show you here what it sounds like and how I do it. And that, Walnut, in a little walnut shell, is how I make my videos. And then I will just post them, schedule them on both Anchor and on YouTube. So if we play this now, it will have the graphic that I added, and it will now play the... Oh, I already had it on there. Here, I'm going to share my weekly walnut. Hello, Walnut. It is me, Les, here for another episode of Walnut Vortexes a little bit. So, and then at the very end, I'll talk to you next week. Bye. Is that final 4 seconds? So and then I save it, and then I upload it to YouTube and Anchor. And if we go back to Anchor, simply browse, find the file, and upload it, and they now have the ability to doing video files, and they play videos on Spotify now. So that is this portion. So that is part 2 of the technos. And I just wanted to remind you, Walnut, that it is as hard as you make it, right? Like, it can get really overwhelming and in your head to like even think about starting a podcast. You think you need to have all of these fancy things and all of the technology. But again, I started sitting in my car doing this off my phone. Majority of podcast like scheduling and stuff happens from my phone. or just scheduled from Anchor on my laptop. So you don't need to buy all the stuff before you can start. You can just start. If you just start, you will learn, you will grow, you will be amazing, but it doesn't have to be hard, right? You can still have secondhand goodness and still have a successful podcast that goes on for years and years because you love what you do. So that is the end of part 2. I'm going to start a third part all about keeping with it and scripts and things like that. So head on over to that one. And this is Walnut Wants to Start a Podcast part 2.